I was gonna make this video yesterday, and then the news of Dejan Milovic, forgive me if I'm not pronouncing that right. You guys know I struggle with pronunciations, better known as Decky, beloved member of the Warriors assistant coaching staff, suddenly passed away. You guys have heard the news. The next couple games have been postponed. Um, I don't really feel comfortable about speaking, on someone I don't really know, but I also know that covering this team for a living, I have to acknowledge that. And it's just a harsh reminder that love your people while you can, right? You just never know. Nothing is given. And in the sports world and sports media, we just put everything under a microscope and focus on things that are really not important in life. And so sometimes something like this happens and it's just you just have to take a step back, right? And it's just like uh yeah, I I'm at a loss for words. I can't imagine how the team feels and how his family feels. All I can say is watching him the last few years interact with the players and other players around the league. Not only did he have their ear, right? But he seemed to have their hearts. And what I mean by that is it's one thing for players to listen to you, it's another thing for them to care what you think. And it speaks to the bigger picture of who you are. And so it seemed as though the players not only listened, but they cared what he thought. And he was an uplifting man. And so prayers out to his family, the team, and everyone affected by it. The truth is, if I didn't make a living doing this, I'd probably take a week off. Like, I'm not, but the older you get, the more you realize that when a tragedy strikes a community, a group of people, a person, um, as much as it may stop their life at a standstill, the rest of the world goes on. And so today I did want to talk about the trades. And forgive me if this is in bad taste, but I've got to push the content out. I've got to push through. Um, Pascal Siakam, as this news was breaking, was also getting traded. Perhaps the biggest trade piece on the board, and the guy that was most linked to the Warriors was traded to the Indiana Pacers, and it was a steep price. It was a steep price, right? Bruce Brown, 3 first-round picks. So mind you, they're saying right now, Indiana's like, yeah, we feel like we can retain him, and we'll see, we'll see. Nothing is a guarantee. I think essentially what that price would have looked like for us would have been Chris Paul's contract, Kaminga valued as a first round pick, and then 2 first round picks. I don't know if we were ever anywhere near offering something like that for Siakam, who again he is a free agent this summer. Perhaps the top name off the market, but it also sets the market, right? I guess you could argue Lauri Markkanen is the top valued name that potentially could get moved. So you imagine his asking price would probably be even steeper than that. Danny Ainge, if Ujiri got 3, Danny would probably want 4, right? And so I don't think the Lauri trade talks are very realistic. I don't. So I think essentially Pascal was the top name that's available. He's off the board. We know what he went for, and that kind of sets the market, at least for this deadline currently. I think the Hawks, as I had mentioned before, are a team that the Warriors could do business with, right? And then a couple of days ago, I heard a rumor, well, they're trying to package Clint Capella and DeJounte Murray. I was like, oh, okay, that might be the deal. That might be the deal in my eyes. Now, DeJounte Murray, I'm not a huge fan of, and I'll tell you when it happened. When he started doing all that stuff at the Pro-Ams. Remember a couple summers ago where he was like slapping dudes in the face and crossing them up, just like Pro-Am ballers at these summer tournaments, I should say. I didn't like that. I didn't like that. And I get it. He's ultra talented and he's got a juice to him. There's no doubt about it. But listen, man, I'm you embarrass, just a normal working man in front of his friends and family, his girl, like you may have repercussions. I just thought that was dangerous and just classless. I didn't like that. At the same time, young dudes can mature, and when you look at the history of star players and guys that kind of have that killer instinct gene, they're not really known as friendly guys all the time, right? It kind of goes hand in hand at times with some of these players. And as far as his on-court skills, he is kind of just what the doctor ordered. I know we're not necessarily looking for a guard, but what he is an ultra athletic, big guard who can handle the ball, can create his own shot, and on paper defend, right? And that's the thing is I think Atlanta's been very disappointed in his defense. It almost goes to a culture thing, right? Because in San Antonio, he was thought of as a all defensive type of guard. He goes to Atlanta and everybody's like, hey, he don't really defend, right? He's capable of defending. If he were to buy into a team that was defending, he has that ability to be a point of attack defender, create his own shot, handle the ball. And then again, there's an edginess to him. There's a chippiness to him. And that's what I say. I don't necessarily like some of the antics and the attitude. At the same time, he's not a guy that you're going to question his competitive spirit. And we all know the Warriors kind of need more of those guys right now. Clint Capella is a name I had brought up. You guys are familiar with him. We played him so many times in those Rocket series, and he is a vertical lob threat with good hands and a big rebounder and a true rim protector. Only 29 years old still because he's been in the league forever, it feels like. DeJounte is 27. Both these guys are still in their prime. So I'll propose the deal. Chris Paul, Kuminga, Guy Santos is a salary filler. You could work someone else in there and not named Pajemski or Trace. Ideally, that would be more of an asset, right? But those three for Clint and DeJounte. Now, there may be draft picks involved. And I already know you're saying, no, absolutely not. Jonathan Kuminga, no, it's a no-go. I get it. But listen, so many people have been proposing me trades in the last 10 days or so. And look, you got to give something up to get something back. I don't, if we want to get guys that are going to move the needle, you're going to have to give up Kuminga. And so I get it. I'm not necessarily comfortable with it. At the same time, I'm kind of being greedy I'm being a little short-sighted, right? Giving up Kuminga could be short-sighted, but it's looked so bad. And I'm at a point where I think I'd be willing to do it. I'd have mixed emotions about it, but given the right deal, that's where I stand, at least right now today. And so I think that some sort of deal like that interests me because you get a center, you get a starting center, and now you get a guy that can, if bought in, bring an edge and brings everything basketball-wise you need from another we don't have one, right? A big athletic ball handler. Is that a pause? Possibly. Before I tell you about my next trade idea, let me tell you about a little special event going on for Underdog Fantasy, partner of the channel. Having a lot of fun with them this season. Gil's Arena has become a very popular podcast. Gilbert is brilliantly ignorant, right? But he's one of these guys where you want to hear what he has to say. Well, they're having a shootout. They're having a shootout with 16 contestants. A mixture of guys, some former NBA guys, you got some content creators, you got some guys I never heard of, right? But the way it works is round one, they're going to shoot 25 middies. You move on to round two, it'll go to the high school, college 325, and so on and so forth till they get to the NBA threes, right? And so I do have some picks for you, at least for this first round, and you may be surprised by that. Mind you, these are 25 mid-range shots kind of around the world, right? Lexi Brown played at Maryland, WNBA player, a guard, and Jenna Bandy is an influencer. Bandy with the booty, baby. She's actually a hooper, though, as you know, and some of these influencers, she actually hoops, right? That when you talk about the gap between men and women's basketball, you can say a lot of things. One area where it's not that far apart is set shooting the basketball. Free throw line, set shooting. And so within the mid-range, I like Lexi Brown to go higher than her 17.5 shots, and I like Jenna Bandy to go higher than her 16.5 shots. I think as a set shooter, Bandy does a lot of these types of competitions. She's gonna be very comfortable, and again, the midi as a set shooter for both these girls. Lexi's is a little more of a jumper, but I like those two to go higher in the first round. It's happening this Saturday, and they will have picks as the rounds go on. Those are my first round picks for Gil's shootout this Saturday with Underdog Fantasy. All right, moving on to another trade that may possibly move the needle. And that's the term I keep hearing amongst fans, right? When someone proposes a trade, they're like, that doesn't really move the needle. Some were saying Siakam wouldn't have moved the needle. And so it's a very subjective term, I guess. But this is one where I think it would. You tell me if it's realistic. The Portland Trailblazers, one of the few teams that are definitively not playing for this season, right? They're developing, right? They're a rebuilding team. Dame out, Scoot Henderson in. They have some nice young players. Ant Simons. Did he game winner? Didn't he crossed up Mikal Bridges, right? He kind of cooked him. Mikal Bridges is supposed to be all defensive. Snap between left, floater. That was tough. They've got some talent. Jeremy Grant. Jeremy Grant is a guy that just signed a 5-year deal that's like almost 30 mil per, right? And so you would say he doesn't really fit the timetable. I believe they signed him before the Dame trade happened. It was kind of like, all right, Dame, we're gonna retain, and then they trade, and so now he doesn't fit their timetable. But he is a guy that any team would love to have. Maybe not contract wise, but on the basketball court, he can fit into any system, right? Because he's about as much of a two-way player as you get these days. And then he's a big, versatile wing on or off the ball as far as creating his own shot. Could you send them Chris Paul, and again, I'm going to say it, I know you're not going to like it, Jonathan Kuminga, to get Jeremy Grant and Robert Williams III? Now, my train of thought would be, poor Robert Williams, man. Those of you that follow me during that championship run against the Celtics that we had, in 21-22, if you watched him try to power through the playoffs with that knee injury, and I was at the time, I was like, yo, he's going to cost himself his career. I couldn't believe basically that he tried to play in those finals. And he did. He dragged his leg up and down the court, and to his credit, he's a tough kid. He's a tough kid, and he's a hell of a player when he's healthy. But is this the third knee surgery he's had now? And so if he is kind of a lost asset, he's a damaged asset. Clearly he is, but a guy where Portland's like, listen, he's just never going to be healthy. And so it would be part of the deal would be us taking on his money, which isn't huge. And then maybe, hey, you can rehab him. The Warriors have had success, more success than other organizations in getting guys that can't stay healthy to stay healthy. But that it would be dependent on Portland saying, hey, man, we liked him, but he's just never going to be healthy. They get off the Grant contract, so they free up a bunch of cap money, essentially, bring in Kuminga, who fits their timeline, and then perhaps there's draft picks. And the Warriors get Jeremy Grant, who, that would be the question. How much longer would it take for Kuminga to be as good as Jeremy Grant? Another subjective question, right? Some may say, hey, it's already happening. No, I think objectively, Kuminga is not as good as Jeremy Grant. I know, fans like to be optimistic. Let's stop that. And he's not as good as Siakam yet, right? But what does that window look like? Jonathan Kuminga is only 21 years old, right? And the truth is, it could be when he's like 24, 25-ish. But then, who's left on our roster? What does the team look like, right? And so these windows, they're like, two trains passing in the night. Like it's this window situation. But I think that Grant, that's a possibility. Y'all let me know in the comments if you would give up Kuminga for Grant. Of course, what do you think about the Atlanta trade? Now, the last kind of big name that's floating out there is Zach LaVine. And Zach LaVine, ironically, it would be very much the same move that was made when we acquired Wiggins. Ultra talented, athletic player who can do everything but doesn't, right? And the hope would be like, hey, you put him in this organization around these champions, and he buys in. But he just signed a Supermax deal. the other thing that is unlike Wiggins is he's not durable, right? He's had knee issues in the past. So I'm not the reason I haven't brought it up is because I think teams are staying away from Levine. I think he's viewed as a negative asset, honestly, on the trade market. And so I think if you were to take that swing and it's like, hey man, we a new change. Is he from California? Yeah, I think he's from Southern California. If you believe you could get him to buy in and all that, I also think that you might be able to get some other assets from the Bulls in taking on that Supermax contract. And so again, Chris Paul is that big $30 million contract. No Andrew, no, I mean, no, I say no Kuminga. I think if you could trade Chris Paul and Andrew Wiggins, could you get back Levine, Caruso, and Drummond? Maybe you have to send them picks, and I'm sure Bulls fans would say, no way, right? But again, I'm operating under the theory that Levine, you like the Bulls have to give something up to get him out of there. That's probably, along with Brad Beal, the worst contract in the league, just from the size of it. I know there are some dead contracts where guys are making $20 million. I mean, you could argue Wiggins is a bad contract right now as well, but Levine's at 40 plus per. And so the size of it makes it one of the worst contracts moving forward when you consider his durability and his unwillingness to play defense, right? So could you add a backup center or a starting center, in our case, probably for Drummond? Caruso, we've been long attached to, right? And so it would be a risk, but you could add some role players and see what you get with Levine. Those are three trades that are involved with the bigger names out there, the quote, needle movers, right? But more realistically, maybe they're just going to make some sort of move along the margins for, maybe a backup big man or something like that. Maybe because of the loss of Decky in this tragedy, they don't make a move. I mean, it's again, everyone grieves differently, right? So it's who's to say they're like, we just don't even, it's just not even in good taste right now to wheel and deal any of these players during what they're going through right now. And I can't blame them. Again, sometimes you have these harsh realities that this is just a game of basketball, man. You know what I mean? So, but I do like the Hawks deal, and I, again, have circled the Hawks as a team that I think the Warriors may do business with. It could be DeAndre Hunter, right? Bogdanovic, the other one, right? I think they have a lot of pieces that would make sense, and I think that they are looking to make a move. I don't know if you caught that game last night against the Magic. I had some underdog picks. I had Suggs higher, and I had Capella higher. I didn't hit, but you saw DeJounte Murray with the game winner in Atlanta last night, and he waved off Trae Young. He was going around on Twitter. And those two, they just don't get along. They're just butting heads. And so they're not going to choose DeJounte over Trae. And so you ask, well, why are they giving up a young guy in his prime? It's because he doesn't fit with Trae Young. And I think that Hawks team is the team. And so if you're trying to put together deals and you want to throw them back at me, maybe take a look at that Hawks roster. But keep in mind, you got to give something up to get something back. As always, hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'm out, y'all.